Okay, we're going to begin an embroidery project. We're going to start with sewing on a button. Simple stitching is a skill that I believe every single human being needs to know how to do. At some point in your life, you're going to need to know how to do this. So we're going to take the artistic route, turn it into a real simple little design, but learn the skill of stitching. And we're going to start with sewing on buttons. In the button box that you were able to choose from, you may have found one that just has simple holes in it, or another type of button called a shanked button, and it has a piece coming out of the bottom of it that the needle just slips right through and you thread it through that way. So either of these buttons are fine to use for this design. The first thing that we're going to do on the piece of paper is create the design. And for those of you who have never stitched before, I think you need to stay with something that's pretty simple. Put the button there in the center. You can even mark where the buttonholes are going to be. Okay, and then just something very simple around the outer edge of it. I suggest something as simple as a bullseye. Just something that simple for those of you who have never stitched before. For anybody who wants a little bit more of a challenge, you could start the same way. Let's say do a circle around the outer edge and then maybe do a little bit more of a design look with it, a zigzag going around the outer edge, and then maybe just some lines that end in a little circle that come out from every point on this. Something very, very simple. Okay? I may even try something else. Maybe have this here. Have my circle that comes around. More of a little flower petal design. As you can see, it's very simplified. Not a whole lot to it. Just a very simple design. I'm not even making sure that it's perfect circles. Just a very, very simple design. Okay, once you have your design done on paper, we need to get this put on the fabric. Okay, so the fabric is about the same size as the paper. And here I'm going to switch over to pencil and very lightly, you can see the marker lines underneath, but I'm very lightly going to trace all the pen lines with the pencil. Okay, very simple. And then my button goes right there in the center. Okay, so now I have it all done on the fabric. That's how you transfer your design to the fabric. Now the first thing we're going to do, we're going to get some thread, and I have different colors of threads already cut for you. So you're just going to take a section of the thread and you are going to thread your needle. And just for you guys, I have a special tool called a needle threader. Okay. This is the needle threader. This little wire piece is used for the size needles that we're using, and then you can even thread larger and larger needles, even up to yarn size with these larger sections right here. Okay, now this is not a toy. Do not play with it. Do not break it. Use it carefully. I have 10 of these. I want 10 of these by the end of this lesson. Okay, the way you use this, you take your needle, take this little wire section and push it through the eye of the needle. And you come back, put your embroidery thread through there, and then pull it through the eye of the needle. And there it came through. Okay. So now I'm ready to get started on threading this. First thing I need to do is put a knot in the end of the thread. So I just wrap it around my finger bring the bottom line down under and back through the hole and create a knot. This is kind of thick thread, so I'm just going to do a single knot. And I'm going to trim that thread right next to the knot. Pick my needle back up. Okay. And then I'm going to place, well actually the first thing I'm going to do is bring the needle up through that center section where I want the button to go on. Then I'm going to put the button right on there. And this one has 4 holes in it, so I'm going to come up one, go down the next one, and do a little cross stitch in here. So I'm going to come up next to it, and then go across. And I want to do this 2 or 3 times to make sure that the button is secure on the fabric. If it starts to get knotted, before you pull it tight, pull it back out and then slowly pull it through. If it gets knotted, you may have to stop, cut your thread off, and then restart again. So just go slow. Untangle the thread as it pulls through. Okay, now that gives me, I've gone through these holes 2 times each. And then I'm just going to check it, see if it's on there securely. Remember, if it gets stuck, just pull it back out and then slowly pull it through. Okay, that feels secure. So I'm going to flip it on the back and put another knot in it. Okay, the way I do this knot is I take the needle, bring it around, under, and back up, and then I put my finger there while I pull the thread through so that the knot goes right down there at the base of that. And at this point I usually put 2 knots. So again, here's my thread. I'm going to bring the needle under it, then grab the needle and pull it up through, put my finger there so that the knot ends up right at the base of that thread. Okay, then I'm going to clip the threads, and I have my button sewn on. Okay, and it's pretty secure. That's the first step. Next thing we're going to do is start an embroidery stitch. It's called a back stitch. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, again, go to the end of my thread, get a knot, single knot, then clip off the excess thread. And then I'm going to start with the inside circle here, this first circle. So what I'm going to do is bring the needle up, and to get it started I'm going to take the needle back down, just like a single stitch. Okay, then I'm going to go in front of it, about the same length of the stitch. I'm going to go in front of it, bring the needle up, and this is why it's called back stitch. I'm going to go back to this stitch where I ended and go down. Okay, and it starts to make a line. So I'm going to go in front of the stitch, push the needle up, pull it all the way through, go backwards to my last stitch and go back in there and pull the needle through again. Simple stitch. It's good for creating lines. You can spell out words with this stitch. You want to be careful not to tighten the fabric up too much when you pull it back through. So go in front of the stitch and then go backwards to the last stitch. And we're going to go all the way around the circle doing the back stitch. Once you finish the first circle, you can put a knot in it, tie it off, and if you still have enough thread to continue, then you'll start the little flower petals or your next circle until you get your design completed. Now, a couple of things to watch. Okay, once I get to the point where once I start pulling it through, if my thread is doubled, that means I just need to pull the thread up a little bit so it's not So I'm always working with a single thread right here. I'm not working with two threads at once like it is up here closer to the needle. I'm working with a single thread right here. Okay, so back here over on my design, I go in front of the stitch, pull the thread through, and then go back to that stitch and back down in. Okay, so I'm going to keep working this back stitch all around this circle. If I run out of thread, I'm going to put a knot in it, clip it, get some more thread, and start again until I get the whole design filled in with the back stitch. Okay, now there's going to be lots of little things along the way, like getting knots in your thread. You're just going to have to figure out how to work with it. You're going to have some trouble maybe threading your needle. Going to have to figure out how to work with it best. It takes a lot of patience to do some stitching like this. Again, I'm not looking for a beautiful stitching. I'm looking that you understand the skill. I want you to be able to sew on a button. I want you to be able to do some very simple stitching. If you had to stitch up a hole in a shirt or something, that you would be able to thread a needle and actually do some stitching. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in this project. Just take your time, go slow. Now, one thing about this, these needles, when you have to buy 125 needles, it does get expensive. At the end of your project, you have to turn your needle back into me to get your grade. Okay? And while you're working on the project, at the end of class, if you'll just put your needle back into your fabric like that, fold it up, put it in your Ziploc, and the next day when you come back in, you have your needle, it hasn't disappeared anywhere, you're ready to get started with it. Okay? So, the completion, you'll have a little square with a button sewn in the center with embroidery around the outside of it. Simple stitching, we're just doing the back stitch. For anybody who wants to experiment a little bit, I've got a handout on some different types of embroidery stitches, and they're just diagrams that show you exactly how to do the stitch, and you are welcome to experiment with those designs also. Alright, everybody get your needle and thread, and let's get started.